With breaking news just into us, a look at the warrant and the property receipt filed by the FBI as part of its search at former President Trump's home in Florida. It includes 11 sets of classified documents, including some marked as top secret. We are live outside Mar-a-Lago with what Mr. Trump is saying today. Good day and happy Friday. I'm Tom Costello in for Hallie, and tonight we are now learning the FBI has seized 20 boxes of documents from former President Trump's home in Florida. That includes information that goes beyond top secret. You're seeing the warrant there, signed by the judge, FBI agents, and a lawyer for the former president. The property receipts show the FBI removed 11 sets of documents, 3 sets of confidential documents, 3 sets of secret documents, 4 sets of top secret documents, and 1 set of what's called top secret sensitive compartmented information. Now, that last group is a step above top secret that officials can only see on a need-to-know basis. The documents also include a grant of clemency to Mr. Trump's former aide, Roger Stone, you remember him, and information about the president of France, though it's not clear if it's the current president, Emmanuel Macron. The warrant also describes where the FBI searched the estate, including an area called the 45 office, as well as storage rooms. It's explicit that the search did not include rooms used by third parties like club members at Mar-a-Lago. Attorney General Merrick Garland requested the court unseal the documents, citing the growing public interest. And the former president did not stand in the way. The Justice Department filed notice that the Trump team did not oppose the release of the search warrant. Now, the former president is also claiming, without evidence on his social media site, that the documents are declassified. And the FBI didn't need to seize anything. And all they had to do was ask. It's worth pointing out, though, that Mr. Trump has copies of the warrant. He could have released them on his own at any time. For some Republicans, the warrant, it's not enough. Senator Lindsey Graham, a Trump ally and a frequent critic of the FBI, says the AG needs to release the information as to why the warrant was necessary in the first place. But the Attorney General, Mr. Garland, has not signaled a willingness to release that information, or at least the affidavit, yet. One thing that's not in the documents that NBC News has reviewed anyway is anything that corroborates the reporting from the Washington Post. People familiar with the investigation telling the Post that agents sought classified documents related to nuclear weapons. It's not clear whether the FBI actually found those documents. Trump, whose sources say spent all last night talking to his lawyers, says any suggestion that he took documents related to nuclear weapons is, quote, a hoax. We have not heard from the current president. Mr. Biden has largely stayed silent as the DOJ has carried out its actions this week. Also today, FBI Director Christopher Wray says the agency is adjusting its, quote, security posture after that attack at the FBI field office in Cincinnati yesterday. We are covering this from every angle tonight. We have the legal breakdown with Carol Lamb. We've also got NBC's Ron Allen at Mar-a-Lago, and NBC's Shaq Brewster is in Cincinnati. But we begin here in Washington with Justice correspondent Ken Delanian, who got his hands on the warrant just a couple of hours ago. So, Ken, you've looked through all of it. Explain for us that top secret, sensitive, compartmented information designation. What does that mean?
Great to see you, Tom. Top secret information is the highest designation of classification. It means information whose disclosure would cause exceptionally grave damage to the national security. But that sensitive compartmented information tag on top of the top secret means that it's even more sensitive. That because what it means is that only certain people who are read into the program can have access to that information. It's compartmented, so only people who have a demonstrated need to know. So that would contain information like the names of CIA sources in the Kremlin, or NSA intercepts, national security intercepts of Chinese leaders speaking. So really, really sensitive stuff, Tom.
All right, and talk us through now the areas of Mar-a-Lago where they laid out this search, where they actually went in looking.
Yeah, so as you said in the open, they were specific about where they were searching and where they were not searching. So first of all, they pointed out that Mar-a-Lago has 58 bedrooms and 33 bathrooms on 17 acres. But they said that they were going to search something called the 45 office, which presumably was Trump's office, all storage rooms and all other rooms or areas within the premises used or available to be used by F. POTUS, the former president of the United States, and his staff, in which boxes or documents could be stored, and including all structures and buildings. That what they were not searching were guest rooms for club members of Mar-a-Lago, or places essentially where there weren't documents stored. But as we know, Tom, it's a big place. The FBI was there all day.
Yeah, listen, the Justice Department is suggesting that these are not the former president's property. The documents are not his property, right? That is the property of the U.S. government. It appears, though, that Mr. Trump's team doesn't see it that way.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting legal question. There are two issues here. One is, can Donald Trump, could he have declassified all these documents unilaterally, even if there isn't a record of that? And frankly, the debate is out on that. It's never been tested in court. A lot of experts we talk to say that's ridiculous. There has to be markings. There have to be some kind of memorialization of a president's decision, even though the president is the ultimate declassification authority. But others say, well, wait a second. All those rules are a product of the executive branch, and if he's the president, he can waive them. But leaving that aside, as our guest Carol Lamb has pointed out earlier today, none of the statutes in question here in this warrant require that the information be classified. So it's another question whether the documents are the property of the U.S. government and whether they were mishandled by the president. That's a separate issue from whether they were classified, and it looks like the FBI is going at this on both fronts, Tom.
Yeah, the one thing that we don't have is the affidavit showing us why they conducted the search in the first place. Right now, NBC News is a part of a group of organizations that try to unseal that information as well.
Yeah, we're trying to get it. It's going to be tough, though, Tom, because the Justice Department is claiming that it protects sensitive investigative information. And what I'm hearing from the Justice Department is they don't expect that this thing ever would be unsealed. This is the document that the FBI swore out to the judge where they established their probable cause. It has a lot of very sensitive information in it, including the names of sources, the larger scope of this investigation. It's a document they do not want to release at this moment, Tom.
NBC's Ken Delanian, who has not gotten much sleep at all this week. Ken, thank you very much. All right, Carol Lamb joins me now. She's a former federal prosecutor and also an NBC News legal analyst. Carol, it appears the former president is facing potential criminal exposure under the Espionage Act and for the mishandling of records. Has anybody ever been prosecuted for this before?
Yeah, people have been prosecuted for this before. Obviously, nobody at the level of a former president of the United States. And generally speaking, people aren't prosecuted if they inadvertently stick a piece of paper in their briefcase and take it home and it comes back the next day. That's not the kind of crime that DOJ is interested in prosecuting. But a lot of it depends on the nature of the document. And as Ken pointed out, the statutes listed in the search warrant don't require classification. They don't require top secret classification. That's something that has gotten spun up that actually doesn't exist in the search warrant, but they did end up finding top secret, or at least what had been designated top secret and top secret SCI information at Mar-a-Lago. It has no business being there. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the department decides to do with this information. They obviously wanted to get it back. That was very important to their reasons in the search. But now taking the next step to a possible criminal prosecution of, who knows, the president or members of his staff or both, it's going to be very hard to say.
I'm reminded that former National Security Advisor Sandy Berger under President Clinton, I think, was also held accountable for having some documents after he left office. What could the penalties be, though, if anybody is found guilty for these kinds of violations?
So it really depends what the violation is. If you take the Espionage Act, which regardless whether it's an intentional removal of documents for bad purposes or whether there's a gross negligence standard as well as a possible charge for refusing to return the documents when the government asks for them back, that carries a maximum 10-year sentence. There's a crime that is cited in the search warrant that is a 3-year crime, then that just has to do with removing items that are actually supposed to be kept as part of the national record, as part of the record of the presidency. But interestingly, that even though it carries only a 3-year sentence, it also says that anyone convicted of this crime cannot hold any federal public office again. And the last one is obstruction of justice, and obstruction of justice has to do with obstructing a federal investigation. So there are a variety of crimes here that are actually cited in the search warrant.
Carol, real quick, the affidavit, is that the type of thing we may never see? What is your expectation on the affidavit?
I think all of your former federal prosecutors who are legal commentators for you are shaking their heads saying, yeah, you may never see that affidavit. You know, when a federal agent comes in to a magistrate judge's chambers with their affidavit in support of probable cause for that search warrant, and these documents can run 100, 200 pages long, and they are telling that magistrate judge everything about the investigation. So this is still a somewhat early stage of the investigation. You know, they just got these documents from Mar-a-Lago, so they're not going to want to be telling everybody everything they know about the investigation.
Carol, thank you. We're very fortunate to have your expertise. Thank you very much. Carol Lamb. We want to go to NBC's Ron Allen. He is in West Palm Beach, Florida. Ron, what else are we hearing from the Trump team today?
They've had a response at every turn of this, Tom, and they were very vocal today in pushing back against this. One thing the president kept saying is that all these records were already declassified and that they're not top secret, therefore, because he can do this. And as you heard, there is some debate about that. He said that the FBI could have taken these things anytime they wanted because there was a process underway where he was cooperating. He said that his lawyers weren't allowed to be involved in the process. They had to wait outside. That's not true. And it wasn't true also that they could have had these documents anytime they wanted because there was a subpoena issued some time ago, back in June, we understand, and Merrick Garland said in his remarks that they'd made other efforts to try and recover these documents that were unsuccessful. The president has also been very political in his comments during the course of today. He's talked about his poll numbers being higher than ever before. He's talked about the number of candidates that he's supported and backed who've won primaries. He's talked about the midterm elections coming up and Republican fundraising. So he's clearly been trying to make political advantage of what's happening today, rallying his base, rallying his supporters, while at the same time he's been constantly attacking the Biden administration, the Department of Justice, and the FBI for carrying out what they say was an unwarranted and unethical and outrageous raid.
It's probably worth reiterating that the White House insisted knew nothing about this before the FBI conducted before it moved into the Mar-a-Lago. Can we quickly ask you, though, you know, the former president spent a lot of last night talking with his lawyers. Do we know why they let the Justice Department unseal this warrant? Why didn't they just release it themselves? They had it.
Yeah, and if they had released it, it would have shown what is apparently, or what many believe is, incriminating evidence that he should not have had here at Mar-a-Lago. So they essentially were calling the AG's bluff, and Merrick Garland went through with the process and made it public himself. It doesn't seem like it's the kind of thing that former President Trump would want to be seen public, although, again, he has gone to great lengths to castigate it and undermine the veracity of this and the legitimacy of this whole process. But I think the short answer to your question is that the president didn't want this to be seen publicly.
Okay, well, then I think you're going to answer my next question with the same answer. What about the affidavit? The information about why the FBI wanted to do the search? One would assume if they didn't want to release the warrant, they probably wouldn't want the affidavit released either.
I can't imagine that they would, because anyone under investigation, as the other guests have said, this is the document that has all the detail in it. It has all the more detail about the allegation, names, places, dates, whatever, very specific information that the public will never see. And clearly, that's not something that anyone under investigation would want out there. It would be so much to refute. I don't think that that's anything that anyone would ever want public if they're the target of an investigation.
Veteran NBC News correspondent Ron Allen, thank you very much.